there.
Do you know who, you must, Don Frank and Russ Thompson?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, Russ's boy, Tracy, is a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, he came to my house with a picture of Emery, Don Frank, and Russ in kindergarten.
Oh my!
From Sugar Grove High School.
Is that right?
Sugar Grove Elementary School.
Yeah, yes.
They were all the same age. Russ, Don, and Emery.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what that picture? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I would think so.
One last question, Greg, before.
Sure.
What's the difference in age between Emery and Gordon?
About 3 years.
So, okay. Gordon was younger.
Emery was born in 27 or 26.
I was thinking 26.
Yeah, I think it is. And Gordon was born in 30.
Okay.
But Emery was born in May and Gordon was born in September, so they weren't.
Okay. How about Paul?
He was born in 31.
Okay. 26, 30, and 31.
31, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because Gordon and I was older than he was, 2 years. And he would tell people, if he knew them well, that I had kidnapped him.
You robbed the cradle.
Yes, I took him across the state line.
Oh, is that what he said?
But he would say for immoral purposes.
The Mann Act.
Yeah, but we went to Winchester, Virginia to be married, and that's the reason he said that.
That's why he said that.
Uh-huh.
He was 15 and you weren't.
Yeah, that's right. No, you had to be 21 down there, and that is the big part of it, is we had to call his mother from the courthouse, and she didn't even know we'd gone.
You eloped?
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
And my classmate, I had roomed with her in the nurse's home for 2 years, and she and her boyfriend went with us, and they were married in Winchester.
Wow.
So,
what an event.
Yes. And as I say, Gordon was the only one that wasn't 21. And we had to call his mother. And 15 minutes later, she said to the girl, I don't want to do this, but I guess I have to tell you, they have to get married. You'll have to allow them to get married. And she said, the girl said, we usually don't allow people to do this. But she said, there's no doubt in our mind that that was his mother. And my mother-in-law really made points. She asked us if we had to get married. And we didn't have to get married. We just decided to go and get married. But oh my. Well, that's how it was.
Janet, Toddy, man.
Toddy.
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 My maiden name is Todd.
Oh, well then that makes sense. I'll never forget it now.
And I had never been called Janet. I was Todd.
Todd,
Yeah.
sure was. Perfect. Well, we're delighted. Thank you for coming down and sharing your husband's photos as part of this project. But more important, for our purposes, you were not only part of Gordon's world, but you were part of Stateline as well in a unique way.
Yes.
First of all, I suppose, how did Gordon get into the photographic business?
Well, when he was going to college in Rochester, New York, when he graduated from a junior college that was there, he applied for and got a job at Kodak. Now, he was interested in pictures before then. He had borrowed money from his grandfather, and his grandfather made him sign I guess it would be a debtor's thing.
A note, promissory note, right?
Yes, that he would pay it back. And he was 13, maybe. And when I first knew him, he was still carrying that camera. And he had it in a wooden box about this big. And he carried the camera. And Paul and Betty and Gordon and I went to the races together. And one night, Gordon had set this box down that was his camera, and some man picked it up and started to walk away with it. And Paul said, he went up to him, and he said, "That isn't your box. That's my brother's." And the man set it down. But I think that was the only time that Gordon ever set his camera down.
Right, learned after that, yeah.
Yeah, he took very good care of it.
Now, his interest in photographing races, I assume, came from his brother's involvement in racing.
That's right.
And was Gordon generally interested in racing before photography, or?
Oh, he was interested before.
Was he?
Yes. It was primary to them all, because Emery built his own motor when he was probably that car he drove in 41 to that race.
Yeah.
He had built the motor himself.
Was Gordon was he mechanical? Did Gordon like to monkey around with car?
Well, until he was quite old, we never sent a car to the garage.
Ah.
And he has, and I still have, a Corvette. And he and his children changed the motor in that Corvette. Yes, it doesn't have a Corvette motor anymore. It has a Chevy motor. But he put it in, he and his children.
So there's an inclination to get it about cars generally, and then to have Emery actually out there racing would have been a logical
It was.
process, yeah.
It was.
And you tagged along as well?
I did the first year nearly every race, and the second year I was working, so I didn't go so much. And after that, I went if I was able to. And if I should tell you that we lived on Doherty Run, which is across from the mall, and we had a big garage on our property. And the 57 Chevy that Emery run was built in that garage.
Okay.
Yes. He and his men, and I don't know that the 56 was. I can't remember it, but I remember the tail fins on the 57, and I'm sure it was built in that garage.
Now, we in our project, we're doing Stateline, but the track that preceded Stateline was Skyline. Do you remember going up there?
Yes, but Dickie Bend preceded that.
Oh. What do you recall about Dickie Ben's? If you had to close your eyes and describe what the track even looked like, what would you say?
Oh, I think it was Third Mile. And I think that they just had barricades set up around it at first, because Paul and Betty, and that would be Gordon's brother, and myself and Gordon went to the races one night, and we didn't have money to pay our way in, so we crawled under the fence. And I think that was the only time we crawled under the fence.
Now, you talked about night. These were not under the lights, were they? This was not racing under the lights.
Oh, I think Dickie Bend did at the end.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah, because at first they did in the afternoon, but then they did at the end, and it was right where that old drive-in theater was. That was where the racetrack was.
Okay.
Okay?
Now, one of the guys who owned the track was still alive a few years ago. I want to say Dick
Morris.
What was his
Morris.
Boyd Morrison?
Morris.
He's no longer. Anyways, then from Dickie Ben's went to Skyline, which
That's
was
right.
in Sugar Grove. What do you recall about that track?
Well, it was longer than Dickie Bend, and it was wider than Dickie Bend. And I remember that the competition was fierce. And that was, I don't know whether I should tell you about the mouse in Emery's radiator or not. That was where the mouse was in his radiator.
Now, how did he discover that?
Well, it started to boil. And steam. And there were other things that happened. If it could happen, it happened to Emery.
Yeah.
And we always said that his mother prayed so that he wouldn't win races, because then he wouldn't go national with NASCAR or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went to Skyline, and Gordon took pictures at Skyline.
Yes. And he set up a board that had a display of pictures on it. And the people that came in and out of the racetrack could buy pictures. And I sat with the board and sold the pictures. And I don't remember when I started this. I just know that in 1957, for sure, I was there selling pictures because I was pregnant with Stephen at the time. And that, I was there.
So Gordon would take the shots the week before, develop them, and then there would be one picture of each. And then what would happen? They would give you money, $1. $1 per picture, and then you'd bring it back the next week?
Yes.
So they wouldn't buy the picture right there.
Oh, no.
So there was one of each.
Yeah. And now you couldn't even buy the undeveloped picture.
I was just going to say.
The sheet of paper for less than about $5. When Gordon first started it, he could get 25 sheets of paper, full size, 8 by 10, for $5 and something. And at the end, when he bought paper, it was $150 for 25.
Wow. Did he talk to you about his technique, how to position himself on the track? Because clearly he was on the inside.
He was on the infield.
In the infield. I mean, there was action going on all over the place. Whether he would position himself on the first turn or the second turn, where you anticipate where there's more likely to be action. Did he talk to you at all about his strategy?
No, he didn't have one. He ran from place to place.
Did he?
Yes.
Okay.
And he didn't, if there was an accident, if there was a great pileup, he of course ran to it. And I don't think that he developed anything in his mind as to how he would do it. But he did work on how to pose the men with their cars or with the flagmen. And that was, he never talked about it, he just did it.
Yeah, so it's at the end of a heat or a semi or whatever, they have the flagman, and that's the picture that, of course.
It was usually when they finished
Right.
on the final race
Right.
that he took the picture.
So he would not take pictures of the heats and things like that?
Not unless somebody asked him to.
I got it, okay.
Or unless there was Emery,
Right,
he would take pictures of him.
right. Now, did you attend most of these races with him?
I did it first,
Okay.
excuse me, but after we had 4 children and I had worked and did work, I didn't go as much with him. And then I didn't lose interest in racing. I just didn't want to go anymore.
Gordon did this really from mid-1950s through when? When did he last take his pictures?
1978.
And what's the story of why he quit?
Well, he was at a race up at Stateline, and a car started through the infield toward him. And he felt that he was going to be run over, that he couldn't move quickly enough to get out of its way. And our oldest son was in the stands, and he started down out of the stands to go to his father, because he was sure that Gordon would be run over. And the car didn't hit him. He escaped that time. And he said during the next week, he told us that he was not ever going back to the racetrack, that he felt that the Lord had watched over him and kept him from being killed the week before, and he wasn't going to go anymore. And he didn't.
Wow, just to be able to say quit cold turkey, if you will. Was he contracted by Stateline, or did he do it independently?
He did most of it independently. I don't know of him being contracted at all.
Okay. So when he took pictures, his job, well, his only source of revenue was to sell them to either the public or the drivers.
That's right.
So the Stateline didn't buy them or necessarily buy them?
No.
As part of this taking pictures, did he feel like he needed to get close to the drivers at all? Did he have any sort of relationship?
He must have had some kind of relationship with them. Now, why? I don't know, but I know that he went into the pits, and he knew all the drivers,
right,
and he knew them by name, and I'm sure that he had established at least some type of relationship with all of them. And people like Squirt Johns, they'd been around 20 years.
Right.
They were bound to talk to each other.
Right.
And Ron Klinger, I don't think Ron raced at Stateline, but he had every other racetrack before. And Clarion was a half-mile track, a dirt track. And I think Shippensville was too. And they went there because they could go like mad. And one of the things they did that sticks in my mind is they would lighten the flywheel on a car so it would have less weight. And especially on Shippensville and Clarion, and I'm wrong, Clarion wasn't a half mile. Shippensville was the half mile. And they went like mad on Shippensville. And I can't remember what the metal was that they used on the flywheel that they put in. It was the same one they use on airplanes now.
Oh, is that right?
And 10 or 15 minutes from now, I'll remember. Okay.
Call me.
Yes.
Did Gordon, what other tracks did he do? We know he did Skyline, Stateline. Did he travel the circuit?
Yes.
Okay. So he did other
Erie,
tracks. Okay.
Erie. And we went to Shippensville and to Clarion, and we went to Brockway, which has to be the worst track that ever was, and Wellsville. And I think Bradford had a track for a little while. Now, he went to Williams Grove once, and whenever he went, he always could get into the track and get on the infield. He didn't stand around the sidelines. He was able to.
Obviously, they knew him, but he wasn't necessarily working for a paper. He was just doing it for Gordon Mann.
Yeah.
Did he have a favorites? Did he come back and say, once again, Bobby Schnarr, Squirt Johns? Did he talk about any of the guys more than others?
Well, nobody was supposed to win except Emery.
So he was very biased.
Yes, there was nobody to talk about.
Fair answer. That's a good answer. Even Emery, did he come back and report to you when you weren't at the race saying, here's how my brother did today?
That's what they talked about on Sunday. And my daughter would tell you that the family never talked about anything except who was running what under their hood. And the strange part was that both she and I could identify any car that came toward us,
Right.
and also what they had under the hood. But we couldn't talk about things that other people talked about. They weren't interesting.
So it's just all about racing, and could you tell when how Emery was doing or not doing, just by the sound of the engine when you were at the track?
Yes, in later times, like in 57 and 58, and when he moved over any of the tracks he went to, if I listened and didn't talk to people around me, I could tell how his motor was running. And Gordon knew this. I would tell Gordon before the race ended whether Emery was whether he was going to place in the first 2 or 3 or not, because my ear was tuned to what his car should run like, and I think it had to do with the one being built in our garage, that I had learned what sound he wanted.
And that was the 57 car?
Yeah.
I may have heard it, but why 8 ball? Why the number 8 with the cue ball?
8 ball. I don't know. I know it was forever. He never had another number.
Yeah, me neither. I've always.
Mary might know,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Okay. Do you know?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. We have a mystery we got to solve, because that's so identified with him. What's your most vivid memory of a Stateline experience? You went up there for several times, and maybe 1 or 2 kind of funny things happened, or unique things happened, or.
All the tracks blend together. When you start trying to separate out memories, you have problems with it. And actually, I would suppose that I remember they went to Butler, and that was where some of the crazy things happened to Emery, to his motor, but I can't be specific.
Were you there the night Madman McGinley did his?
That he stuck
Dressed
his
up? Yeah.
that he stuck his leg out the window and pretended to be a female?
Yeah.
No, but I heard all about it and saw pictures.
Who was your favorite outside of Emery?
Oh,
When you sat there and you watched these cars going, every once in a while you had to root for somebody.
I like Don Bailey.
Don Bailey.
Now, I think he quit long before the track closed.
Right.
I don't remember that he went to Stateline a long time. And I guess he was my favorite.
Yeah. And Gordon, again, back to Gordon, did he, when he ended taking pictures in 1978, did you guys go to the races after that? Did you sit in the stands?
No, he never went back. And I think it had to do with, it was a hard thing for him to do, to quit. And I think that he knew that if he went back, he would go back to taking pictures.
Right.
And he didn't want to do this, that it would stir up too many memories, and he would want to go.
Did he ever put together a booklet or anything, a montage of his photographs?
No.
Did he ever want to? Was that ever an interest of his?
I don't think so.
He just went on to the next thing and...
Yes.
As he talked later in life, was that that period of life, that kind of 20-some years of picture taking, was that a big part of his life? Was he proud of that time period? Did he talk about it much?
I don't know that he talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
He would if there was somebody called him or somebody talked to him about it. Then he would talk about it. But I don't remember that it was a specific part of conversation.
Right. Emery raced until 1982, I believe. And did your conversations until he quit racing? Why did Emery quit racing? You know why?
I know why, but give me a minute. I think it had to do with insurance, about the garage.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure I'm right, that the insurance company didn't want him racing because of the implications that if something happened to him, what would happen to the garage, because he hadn't designated anybody to take it over.
Okay. I think I've heard that right. Was that hard on Emery to finally say, I'm done?
I think it was.
Yeah. Because he did it for
Long time.
yeah.
Yes, a long time.
And other than an occasional old-timers race where he just would go up to the state line just for the heck of it. How interesting. And I think you mentioned that all Gordon did was take still photographs. He never really picked up a movie camera or
No,
anything
no.
like that. What's the question you're waiting for me to ask you about either your experience at State Line or about Gordon at State Line that I'm missing?
I think you've been pretty thorough. But I think that you haven't asked whether our kids went with them.
Did the kids go with you?
Oh, yes. They attended every race. And Stephen, our youngest, sold programs. And he liked to sell on the side where they drank beer because they gave such good tips.
That's good. No, that's a good video. Oh, golly. Well, let me do it, because they were so young and at the racetrack. How did you keep control of them, kids? I mean,
At the racetrack?
yeah.
Well, they usually would sit with me, except the older ones would wander around.
Okay.
But they would come back to me. And then when Stephen started to sell papers, I think that the kids just hung around and they didn't go off to some place.
Did Dad ever let him on the infield with him?
Oh, no.
No.
No, they never went to the infield. Well, Dave did when he was 3 months old because the car was parked in the infield and he laid on the back seat, and whenever the car, if he cried, when the cars would start to run, he would quit crying. And they were like his lullaby. He'd go to sleep then.
I'm visualizing, so the Gordon man car was parked in the infield. That's where he had his equipment. He brought it out of the car, and you had David in the back seat.
And I wasn't with them.
I love it. That's a great visual.
He never went far from that car taking pictures. But that first summer, he took Dave with him.
So he's working, you're back home.
No, I was working too.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, Gordon's working at State Line, and David...
No, at Dickey Bend.
Oh, Dickie, okay. But still, that's too funny. That's really
Well, that happened.
I'm glad she asked herself, didn't you know?
Yeah.
What else am I missing? These are great stories.
Did you ever, as the guys in the family were sitting around on Sunday reflecting on the races the night before, was there ever a dialogue about that one driver that was sort of, I'm going to deem him as sort of the bad guy, the guy that maybe spun Emery out the night before?
Why, of course.
Was there any particular person that came to mind that did that
No.
more than once? Nothing
No.
you can...
No, you didn't dislike somebody because of that. If it was right at the end of a race and somebody spun them out, then everybody would be angry. But there weren't many fights because of it. I mean on the racetrack or infield or in the pits. They just were there.
Speaking of the pits, did you go into the pits?
Oh no, women weren't allowed in the pits. It was bad luck for a woman to be in the pits. It was like having something green. You weren't allowed to have a green car because it was bad luck. And you could, I don't think Emery even sold green cars. And I know that Gordon didn't want a green cart for years. Wow. I think I finally had one in 1978. I had an old Buick that was green.
So you were not permitted in the pits?
No.
So that's why Gordon was selling the pictures in the pits. You were outside with the public.
I didn't dare be in the pits.
Was that a problem? Did some of the wives, were they upset by that?
No, it had to do with racing law. That nowhere did they leave a woman in the pits. And these women drivers, I was just flabbergasted because when we were young, women would never have competed in a race.
Yeah.
Now, Johnny McGinley pretended to be a woman and competed, but no.
So that was verboten. So did Gordon take the kids into the boys into the pits at all?
He did when they were bigger.
Bigger, yeah. So just to kind of meet them and
yeah.
Wow. This has been great. You're a great interview. I want you to know that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But I should be. I lived through these years too.
Yes, you did.
Uh-huh.
Well, great.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
we look forward to not only bringing you up to Jamestown in September, so you can see what we did with the pictures as part of the documentary.
Okay.
And we thank you for permitting us to take access to this. We'll get them all back to you, of course, quickly. But we're really excited. We're excited about sharing the work product of Gordon Mann as part of the documentary.
Well, if we find any more pictures, I will call you.
That'd be great.
Okay?
That would be terrific.
Because I would think that there are more pictures in my mind. And of course, there are hundreds of negatives.
Right.
And I must have 250 with me, but there are more than that. I had a box I didn't even tap.
Well, yeah, and frankly, I'm back and forth to Warren all the time.
Okay.
For my legal work, so it's easy to stop by and just pick that up for me, and I'll leave my business card so that you have a contact point. Yeah, we're very excited about it, and if you don't mind, we're going to take a look at the negatives and decide which are the good ones, and we'll work with you as to getting some of those reprinted, because you have a treasure trove here.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you.
But what we talk about, Gordon and I talked about it, and I have what we're going to do with it. Because there are some of his negatives in his pictures that I would never throw out.
Right.
Now, the run-of-the-mill things, the everyday things, they go unless somebody asks me for them. Then I pick them out for them. But I gave them 2 years to ask for them.
Right.
And now they just go.
Sure. So. Well, I'm glad you didn't throw out the Stateline ones.
Oh, I wouldn't do that.
Because this is going to be a major part of our documentary.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.